Hi, today I'm going to show you some things about my weaving. I am a novice weaver, and so I make lots of mistakes still, but I've been thinking a lot about how weaving is similar to our church in a lot of ways, so let me explain that. First of all, when you're doing a weaving project or you're building a church, you need to put some time into preparation. And that's the theme of the Sunday services for the month of August. So most things that are worth doing require some forethought. Weaving for sure. In weaving, as in a spiritual community, you have to think about a lot of things, about making sure that you are creating what you want to create and that it has all the beauty and texture and color that you want it to. So first you think about the big picture. You think about church, I'll think about weaving. First I have to think, what do I want to create? And why is that worth my time? Who am I doing it for? I might be creating something for a family member or a friend or for myself. In church you might be doing it for a part of the community that needs help or for your own personal development. What do I hope to learn from this experience? And you think about what kind of resources do you need to use? Do you need books, classes, advisors, tools? Certainly there's a lot of tools in weaving. So once I've decided those kind of questions in my weaving, then I start to think about finding a good pattern. So among my resources, I have a lot of good books. Here's one, it's called Double Weave. I'm not going to explain that. Here's one, a whole book full of patterns just for an 8-shaft loom, which is something I have. And certainly I need the books such as Learning to Weave, because I am learning to weave. I have a lot more books like that, but what I did for the creation I want to make is I found a picture. Actually, it was this one on the front of this book that you know what? All these different colors in the windows that change as you put in the weft, that would be really cool. And Joe said that's the one you should make. So that's what I was working on. So I've chosen a pattern. And the colors in here are not the colors I wanted. I decided for UUCC, I wanted the colors to be the 7 colors of the rainbow for representing LGBT support, or the 7 principles currently of the Unitarian Universalist Association, particularly the 7 principles. So I got excited about that. When you're trying to decide the big picture of what you want when you're weaving, you also have to think of not only the colors and the pattern, but what kind of texture do you want? You can use thick yarn or thin yarn or nubby yarn or all kinds of different things, and they all build into just what you want with your texture and your weight. How big do you want it to be? This is meant to be about 30 inches wide, and as I got enthusiastic about this and bought the yarn, I suddenly realized my loom only makes up to 22 inches at the very best. So, those are the things you have to think about in advance. Next, you have to check your supplies. So, do I have everything I need already? I've got a lot of yarn that I have bought. Is that all? Will the colors and the yarn type that I have work for this pattern? They may not. The patterns usually dictate what weight of yarn it should be. They don't dictate your colors, but they may say how wide it has to be, as I said. Could spending some more money fill in the blanks and help me succeed? Once again, going back to a church, that often comes into place. Do we have what we need to have church in person? Do we have what we need to start a daycare center? Whatever we decide is important, do you have the supplies? Do you have the money? Do you have enough time and energy for this? In church, maybe do you have enough people that are enthusiastic to make something happen? Or Do you have just enough people? Do you have enough time to get it done? In my weaving, I wanted to get this done by the time of this service. Did I have enough time? I wasn't sure. So, as I said, all the way along, weaving compares a lot to other issues in life, such as having a church. But back to weaving, the next step then is to start to plan the details. So I have to think, now I've got my colors and I have my pattern, so exactly how many threads of each color am I going to need in order to accomplish this? And how long do they need to be? They have to make the length of my product plus some waist on one end and waist on the other end. So I have to figure out the length of each, they're called ends. Each thread is called an end. And how much of the sideways yarn, which is called the weft, do I need? So I'm adding it all up, figuring out what do I need. And then I have to study the pattern really hard and get ready to dive in. So in the next section, I'm going to talk about the warp. Okay, Miriam wrote a really good article in this month's newsletter. You should read it if you haven't. I'm going to quote Miriam. We're going to talk about the warp. She says, strong cords known as warp give a tapestry its strength. The warp provides a framework that determines a fabric's integrity. And although almost completely hidden from view, the warp is essential to the fabric's wholeness. So as I think of our church, in any church, the warp in our church is our 7 principles. And the colors of the rainbow for the 7 principles also imply LGBT. So, as I said, I thought that was perfect for us. So the first step, as I said, is to measure the warp threads. You have to have the right length in order to fit on your loom and create your whole creation. So this is a warping board. Can you guess what it's for? What I did is I measured in this string exactly how long I need each of these threads to be. And I tied it here and I tied it here. And now I know this is a path I have to take, and when I get to the bottom of it, I've measured the right length. So here I have some black thread, and this is what I would do, is I would take it up here, follow this along, come over here, up, underneath, and then when I go back, I go over, and then I follow the same path. And it goes on and on and on. I won't do the whole thing while you're watching, but what this does is see how these are separated. They're all the same everywhere else. Here they're separated and they crisscross and they're over here. This is really important in weaving because if you get these threads that like to tangle, if you get them tangled up, you're going to be tearing your hair out and it's just going to be a mess. You'll want to just throw it away and start over. So when you get all these threads, hundreds of threads, all wound on here, before you take them off the warping board, say, okay, now I have the right length. You're going to carefully separate these where they crisscross. And what that does is it has the top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. And that's how you keep them in the same order that you wound them on. So that's all I'm going to show about that for a moment. Okay, the next thing I'm going to explain is basically how the loom fits together. I have a visual aid here. There's a winder on both sides of the loom. This is because each of these loom warp threads have to be very taut and equally tensioned all the way across. So you wind it up on one side and on the other, and you get it nice and tight. And then as you gradually weave your fabric, you loosen one and you tighten the other in order to move it forward. It has to be level across all of your work. And so it goes over a beam on one end, down from the beam on the other end. In the middle, this is the interesting part. It goes through a thing called the reed. Here's a reed. Now reeds have all these, it's like a comb. It has all these nice little slots, and you put one or more threads in every slot, and it keeps everything carefully aligned and separated just to the right amount. Think of your values and keeping your head on straight. Everything has to be aligned as well. So there's the reed. After the reed, it goes through these things that are called heddles. See, a heddle has a hole in it like the needle, the eye of a needle. There's only one thread goes through each heddle. So let's say you have 300 warp threads. That's a lot of needle threading, and it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a lot of attention to detail, just like life. So after it goes through the heddle, it goes down the other side. So in a moment then, I'm going to show you the Real Loom. Okay, we're looking at the Real Loom here now. Here's the back. This is called the back of the loom. And here's the winder I was telling you about. And you see all my pretty colors? I have black in between each of the 7 principles here. And you see it comes up, goes across this beam. Everything is nice and tight. And these are the heddles. Like, for instance, here's one heddle, only one thread is going through that one heddle, and there are a lot of them, and that takes hours. Okay. So here we are on the other side of the loom. This is what you call the front of the loom. Remember that reed? This is a reed. It's on a pivoting thing, and you'll see why soon. But if you can see behind it, here are all those heddles. We're looking from the other side now. And the reed lines them all up very neatly, as we said, and it tries to keep them at this width, which is what we were shooting for. When I want to, this is the key to weaving, is you know, weaving maybe goes like this, in and out, and then the next row would be out and in and out and in. How would you do that? Well, you have to actually lift heddles. So here I'm lifting heddle number 1 and heddle number 2, and number 3 and 4 are staying down low. This space between them here is called the shed. What you do is you take what's called a shuttle, and it has weft thread in it, and you just run it across from one side to the other, and then you use this thing here to, it's called the beater. You have the reed inside of it, and you go and you jam it together. And then I use the other treadle, which is lifting number 2 and number 3, and it goes all the way across. Now once again, I just beat it down. So I'm just going to do some of this for a few minutes. I'm doing a black strip here. After I did my green, now I'm doing my black. So once again, getting back to Miriam's article about tapestry, she said, the beautiful strands that meander in and out of the warp are called the weft. The weft provides color, texture, luminosity, and interest to the cloth. At UU Community Church, we have a lot of colors. We have the varieties of people with their personalities and their skills and their interests. We have such a good variety of Sunday services. The minister adds so much to the church of the interesting things that she brings to the congregation. We have our enrichment programs, our service projects. There's so many colors going along in the weft that change, but they are structured by our 7 principles. I think that's really neat about weaving. I'm going to do a little bit of weaving here. So now you can watch and see how this is actually, if you're interested, this is actually called a twill. If you notice that it's making diagonals going up this way. So I'm going to go across here, and you can just watch for a few minutes. Oops. Top. pretty soon I'm going to start doing the next color. I'm almost done with the black border here. Okay, stop. So now I've done my black, I'm ready to start a new color. Isn't that a pretty blue? One of the things I really love about weaving is how you find how the colors of the warp and the weft interact. As I'm working with, now we're starting to get some blue color. This is the line of warp that is actually the same color of bright blue. And what you'll find is when that warp and this weft connect, they really resonate. It makes a brilliant blue square. Just like people, when you really personally resonate with one of our principles or one of our projects, you just light up. And the other people that may not be quite as excited about the project or the principle, they blend with you and they still support you. And they still make interesting colors that are nice, but the ones that just have the perfect match, that is so meaningful to those people. So once again, it's so much like weaving. I just love it. So when I am done with this project, I am hoping that it will make a beautiful altar cloth that we can hang in front of our pulpit. And I hope, if it turns out well, that everybody will be able to look at this and remember what it means to me. So in conclusion, I hope you enjoyed my little demo of weaving. As I said, I'm new at it, but I've created some things I've really liked and some things that were awful. So weaving gives me joy, just like belonging to UU Community Church. I love imagining a thing of beauty and problem solving and designing and creating. I love the surprise and the delight as I see how the weft and the warp interact. It's always a surprise. I love seeing my creations at work. Once again, I could just as well be talking about church. So I hope this 7-principle altar cloth will turn out to be a meaningful keepsake for UU Community Church. Thanks.